the driving force for me was everything I was seeing in Irish America was frequently shamrock shillelaghs, green beer, very stereotypical, frankly, nonsense about the relationship, which didn't interest me, nor did it interest anybody I knew in Ireland or in the U.S. And it wasn't something that I wanted to be a part of. But I cared about Ireland, and modern Ireland was developing, and Ireland was becoming a very different place. And so it's key to me to do something that would focus on the modern part of the relationship. I think it's very incumbent, particularly on Ireland and this island, to invest in helping a future generation of leaders in America know about this place. So they'll be there for you to call on in future.
Trina, this is an absolute pleasure having you. It's only taken me about 3 years to get you on the podcast. I'm delighted you're here.
Great to see you.
It's great. What's really cool is we're doing this in Dublin at the podcast studio. So shout out to them for letting us record this. And I did think at one point I'm going to have to fly to the States, but because you spend so much time here,
I do.
we finally were able to make it happen.
It's great to be here. Great to see you.
Well, look, I'm really delighted. And we were going back and forth on what our topic or theme was, and then it just sort of both hit us as the most obvious kind of title, because this is really where you spent a life, a career, and just so much energy, which is 3 points on the US-Ireland relationship.
That we should be able to handle.
I think, you spent a bit of time on that.
Oh, probably, if you go back to my time with Kennedy, I started there in 87. So that's a long, we won't add up how many years.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you that I was born in that year. I'm not going to tell you that.
I figured as much, so it's all right.
So look, we're focused on this for your 3 points.
Yes.
The question I always like to ask our guests is, why is this important to you?
Well, I think it started when I was working with Senator Kennedy, and the Irish issues were thrust upon me. My background was I'd studied at McGill in Montreal, and I had actually done my graduate thesis on French foreign policy. And then I went to work as the junior staffer in Kennedy's office, just starting off. And the person who had been handling Ireland, nothing much was happening. And she was like, over it. And she's like, you're doing Ireland. So that's kind of how it started.
So you weren't raising your hand for it?
I wasn't raising my hand for it. I didn't even know to raise my hand for it. The truth is, it's actually a positive thing sometimes when you go into an issue not knowing too much about it. It's good sometimes to just be thrown into something, because then you are forming your own assessments. Somebody else hasn't told you how to feel and think about something. And so it was thrust upon me.
Tell us a bit more about then the journey of that. And obviously, you've written the book Shenanigans. I should call this out early so I don't forget. And it's a great read, and you open up with some great stories to start.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit more about then how you got deeper into kind of the US-Ireland relationship.
Well, it just so happened that when I took up this issue in Kennedy's office, nothing much was going on. But within a short period of time, somebody came to us, Neil O'Dowd, who was the publisher of the Irish Voice newspaper, came to me and said that the IRA was prepared to end the violence, and they needed help to make that happen. And part of it involved having a visa for Gerry Adams to come to the United States and basically be able to tell the followers, prepare them for the route that they wanted to take, which was peace, and for the IRA to end the violence. Long story short, we spent the better part of an intense month to try to get him a visa to let him come to New York for 24 hours, and he did. And within a year, the IRA called the ceasefire. Loyalist paramilitaries followed shortly thereafter, and then you could get into the peace talks with George Mitchell.
Yeah. Pretty significant moment.
Significant, yeah.
In my own personal history, obviously growing up.
Yes. As a baby.
As a baby in Belfast in the north. And you speak about it like it was yesterday, and with clear understanding of the significance and how things happen. So I can picture you back then.
Much younger.
Much younger. You said
much lighter.
focused on this kind of task with Gerry Adams and the situation there. Now, one might assume in your career, right, that's one small kind of thing that, might end up being the only thing that you do in the US-Ireland context. But then, again, going back to why this is important to you, you kind of took it from there. I mean, we'll get into kind of the scholarship in a minute, but again, just why did it become so important to you at that point that you thought, I'm going to dedicate my life to this?
Well, part of it was that I just loved everybody I was meeting. in Northern Ireland, in Ireland, everybody that I was working with, dealing with, I just really got on with them. And part of it is you don't want to do any kind of work where you don't like the people that you're dealing with. But everybody I was encountering, I enjoyed, and I enjoyed learning about the issues. And also, what happened was when I was with Senator Kennedy, he was very good at looking far down the road, even, past his lifetime. And after Irish delegations would sometimes leave the office, he would often say to me, Trina, the Irish have to get their act together like the Jewish Americans do and the Greek Americans do. What are they going to do when I'm not around anymore? And he used to say this regularly. And so when we came to the period of the Good Friday Agreement, I just said, look, I know what you mean. I don't know if it's viable. I'm just going to leave it and try to start something that will address that if we're lucky. And that's how it all started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is probably a great jumping off point, because then rather than going down maybe the political route, then you chose to take the U.S.-Ireland relationship in a different direction and have an impact in a different way. And that's your first point around this relationship. You started this incredibly prestigious scholarship. So tell us more about that.
Well, the two things that led to it really were that when I was a graduate student, I went to McGill in Montreal on a Rotary Fellowship. And I know how transformative, a period abroad is for any student. And I think particularly with America being such a large, the United States being such a large country, it's very easy to be insular. And the more we can get young people outside of our country, the better it will be all the way around. So I had experienced it and I had valued it and it made a big impact on my life. So I was thinking of that at the same time. I was thinking whenever we were trying to convince Clinton to give Jerry Adams a visa, I found myself constantly bumping up against U.S. government officials, people who had been to Oxford on the roads. Bill Clinton had been to Oxford on the roads. George Stephanopoulos had been. I think Tony Lake had been. There was a large number of people who had a connection to the U.K. And I just kept thinking, this is can we not get some can we not get some young future American leaders to come study on the island of Ireland? And so it was those sort of two things combined, my own experience and seeing the value of it, that made me think, okay, we could start a scholarship like that and just see if we can get future American leaders to choose to come to this island.
And we were just chatting beforehand. 300 students have gone through the
Almost,
Mitchell
yeah, it'll be
Scholarship.
almost 300 now. There's 12 every year, and our 25th class is here right now. So
unbelievable. I mean,
yeah.
such a legacy. And again, I want to pull it back to what we talk about often is the relationship between the US and Ireland. Talk to me a little bit about the impact of setting up the scholarship program, and then of course we're going to talk about who it's named after in a minute as well, but we'll get into that in a second. But talk to me about the impact on the US-Ireland relationship.
I think, and you see it now more than ever, if you're Ireland, having people in the States who are in positions of leadership, who know your country, can speak about your country. And the driving force for me was everything I was seeing in Irish America was frequently shamrock shillelaghs, green beer, very stereotypical, frankly, nonsense about the relationship, which didn't interest me, nor did it interest anybody I knew in Ireland or in the U.S. And it wasn't something that I wanted to be a part of. But I cared about Ireland, and modern Ireland was developing. I mean, it was the mid-'90s. The Celtic Tiger was happening. And Ireland was becoming a very different place. And so it was very, it was key to me to do something that would focus on the modern part of the relationship. So these things are investments in the future, and I just care about the relationship. I would like to see it continue. Demographics and time are not on the side of the relationship. I think it's very incumbent, particularly on Ireland and this island, to invest in helping a future generation of leaders in America know about this place. So they'll be there for you to call on in future.
What I love about the scholarship program that you've set up, it's not the Vargo Scholarship. It's not the Doherty Scholarship. You actually have it named after Senator George Mitchell, who's been such a prolific and important person, again, in the North in particular, during the peace process. Tell us about kind of the rationale to pursue him as the naming of the scholarship.
Well, one of the interesting things is when I created the scholarship, I didn't think for 5 seconds that I should name it after myself, which is a very female thing to do, I have to say. If I was a man, I probably would have had no difficulty. And, some people would have argued, why didn't you just name it after yourself? I would not. To me, that would have required a certain level of ego that I don't have. And so I thought, who could I name it after? And George Mitchell had just accomplished the Good Friday Agreement. Obviously, I had great fondness for Ted Kennedy, who I worked for. He cared greatly about Ireland. But I think even he understood if I was going to try to create an organization that was nonpartisan, and he would have been seen, even though George Mitchell was a Democrat, Ted Kennedy was, in Republicans' minds to the extreme of the Democratic side. And so, we had this, I had this feeling that if I went down that route, I would lose a lot of my audience right away just by the name. And Senator Kennedy, fortunately for me, understood that and, supported me getting money for the next 10 years while the man was alive. So he understood that. And so because, as I said, Senator Mitchell had just accomplished serving as the chairman of the talks in Northern Ireland and was so highly respected here, I just went to him and asked if I could put his name on the scholarship. He agreed. And in fact, he's seen almost every class of Mitchell scholars. When he's in Ireland, otherwise, or somewhere in the States, we find a way for him to meet each class. And it's a great experience for them to get to learn from his experience.
So it wasn't a hard sell for him.
It wasn't a hard sell.
So this is probably, again, a good jumping off point for us to transition into your second sort of area or second point around the US-Ireland relationship, because talked about the scholarship, and obviously you have been, working hard and tirelessly to keep this thing going. And another way that you've been able to achieve that and also increase the impact that you're having in the US-Ireland relationship is through connecting Hollywood to Ireland.
Yes.
Which I know you're both passionate about, enjoy, and I think it's been really important for the work that you're doing. So tell us about that.
Well, somebody was asking me the other day, like, why do you pick the things that you work on? And sometimes it takes years for you to realize later that something was meaningful when you didn't know that it was going to have this kind of an impact. And I was thinking one day about when I worked on Capitol Hill. You're a poor staffer on the Hill. You have no money. You don't buy theater tickets much, right? But the Shakespeare Theater was right around the corner from where we worked. And you could get standing room tickets on the day for like half the price or a quarter of the price. You never knew when you would get out of work. So you had to wait and wing it on the night. And so you'd get these cheap tickets. You'd stand in the back. Some of those plays were very long. I'm not sure I'd stand that long for a play today. But I realized it took you away from your day to day. And a lot of the work in Kennedy's office, if you're a foreign policy advisor, I dealt with the bombing of Pan Am 103. I had human rights issues. We were getting Jews out of the Soviet Union. I was helping get kids out of Tiananmen Square after that happened in China. A lot of what you do day in, day out is quite heavy. And so to have that kind of an escape with the arts always made me feel like the arts were a very important thing for everybody.
Well, it sounds like it. Yeah, just a way to unwind, disconnect.
A way to, and disconnect. And sometimes some of the Shakespeare plays can be quite political, and you would apply them to current day-to-day politics. But
you were doing homework then as well.
Yeah, exactly. But so then we used to do a golf tournament in Ireland. We may go back to them at some stage. But in one of my golf tournaments, Dick Cook, who was the then chairman of Walt Disney Studios, played in the tournament. And I wanted to stay far away from this man because my only connection with Hollywood was this scary movie called Swimming with Sharks. It's a Kevin Spacey movie that made people in Hollywood look absolutely awful. And so I went into my own tournament and event. There would be 12 Irish playing 12 Americans. I got to stay away from that guy. Hollywood is just, these people are...
From the Disney guy.
Yeah, I got to stay away from him. And then the guy who was playing with him, who's a mutual friend now deceased, Phil Langell, said to us... he said to me, come on out, we're going to play 9 holes with us. I didn't really have time for it, but I felt like I was the hostess, so I sort of had to go with it. And we ended up playing 18 holes. I just saw Dick the last time I was in LA. We have stayed in touch ever since. But at that tournament, the Irish Film Board at the time said that there was a producer here in town, made a lot of movies for Disney, had never met Dick Cook. And would I get a photo op, set them up to have a handshake, a photo op, which we did. And at the time, I just sort of, I kind of clocked that, so all these people in Hollywood don't actually know each other, even though they may be working together, working on the same film or in the same industry. And that's how the idea came about. Like, let's do something in LA that honors the Irish in film. And we will bring together people from Ireland and the U.S. and hope that things can come from that, which they have. Like J.J. Abrams filming Star Wars here was just one small one.
Yeah,
hundreds of millions of dollars to the tourism economy in Ireland.
Let's not rush past that, right? Let's not rush past that story, because that's one of my favorite stories from the work that you've done in this space. But just staying with the concept of moments.
Yes.
You have this golf tournament, you kind of see this opportunity, a bit
Right.
visionary almost, really, like, wow, this could, this could be another way to
Yes.
better connect the US and Ireland.
Yes.
And now tell us a little bit about how J.J. Abrams went about, choosing Ireland to shoot
Yeah,
some
JJ
really
would say
important.
I harassed him into film.
Right.
Yeah. But I tried on more than one occasion bringing in the film board to sort of pitch Ireland as a location. And it took a while. I mean, the interesting thing about many of these things, like I was saying about the Mitchell Scholarship Program, I mean, I probably started that conversation and it took 5 or 6 years. But by the next time we went in and had a meeting with him, he had just been asked by Kathleen Kennedy to direct the next Star Wars. And I had given him all kinds of decks and photos of the island. And when he first said, "Oh, I'm gonna be doing Star Wars," my heart actually skipped a beat. Not because I was excited, as most people would think.
Are you a big
I
Star Wars fan?
Well, no, it's because I was worried that he would pick like some place that was quite, how so many scenes in Star Wars look like a desolate desert or
Mm.
something. And I thought that's not going to show off Ireland. I wanted Mission Impossible to be done. I wanted
Yeah.
I wanted Tom Cruise,
Running.
rappelling down the cliffs of Moher. I had a vision there. And so I thought, oh, but obviously then he picked Skellig Michael. That was his
Unbelievable.
choice. I had nothing to do with that. And yeah, I mean the rest is history. And those 5 minutes at the end of that first film that he did, just what it's done for tourism,
Oh, it's
it's
transform.
incalculable.
Have you tried to get a boat trip out there?
Do you know what?
You can't do it.
The team actually said, "Did I want to go up there when they
Oh,
filmed?" I am so afraid of heights. I said, "No, thanks. I'll watch it in the movie." I had no anybody else would give their right arm to go up Skellig Michael with, I guess, Mark Hamill and
oh
Daisy
my
Ridley.
goodness.
I was like, "Yeah, I don't think so." But no, it's quite popular
Yeah.
now, and it's a beautiful visually. It's
Yeah.
stunning.
So there's a theme coming through, by the way, about how you recognize that, I think, like any good relationship, it takes time.
Takes
And you're
time,
building things, and you're hoping really, there's a faith,
right?
you're into the
Right.
Buddhism, but there's, you're staying the course, you have some faith that they're gonna change into something else. So let's talk then about the Oscar Wilde Awards, which is amazing. I know we just were talking
Yes.
about the success of this past year. I know you had John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell, and we were talking
Kathleen
about.
Kennedy. We had Kathleen Kennedy, who is the president of Lucasfilms. And she's the
Unbelievable.
one that would have had to basically allow JJ, if that's the right word. Usually, I think a lot of times they let directors choose where they're going to film. So it was JJ's choice, but obviously the president of the studio had to agree that this would be an okay. And her name is Kennedy. And she spoke very eloquently at our event this year and movingly about her connections to Ireland, as did John C. Reilly. And we always honor somebody who's up and coming, which for
Mm.
me is kind of almost the most fun about it, because these are people who are this event brings them to the attention of people who otherwise wouldn't know them, particularly in America. And so that is incredibly gratifying when somebody does that and then work comes from them, or somebody sees them and then hires them for something. So this year we honored Ana Hardwick, who will be seen in Saipan, the upcoming film about Roy Keane. And that was great because people didn't know him in the U.S. He actually has a very impressive career, mainly in the UK and here. And so it's always great to get to show America. Same way we do it with the singers who perform at our event.
Yeah,
You
you've
get
brought
it.
a lot
Yeah,
of folks over, haven't you?
we have a lot of singers um, who are in LA or want to come there to be seen and hopefully meet with record executives, and a couple of people got record deals out of our event. So there, the aim is, I just say to them, look, you have to get yourself here. We're a really small nonprofit. You get yourself here and you perform, and we'll get people in that audience that it's important for you that they see you. So like we'll often have heads of music for films or television, and all you need is like one of those people to see you and sign you, and it changes lives. Um, so it's a lot of things have come from that event.
Yeah, it feels like in so many ways, of course, there's the extension of your experience as a staffer on the Hill and enjoying the arts, and it just feels like a natural extension of what you're doing in the
Yeah,
US Ireland Alliance and connecting Ireland and the US together in a real meaningful, purposeful way, like not gimmicky, like this
not
is
gimmicky.
real, you know, good and important sort of networking for everybody,
It
right?
is. It's important networking for everybody, and Ireland, I hate the phrase "punch above its weight" because it gets used so much, but it really does in the arts. The arts are one of it is I hate to say industry because I'm not sure artists would like me to use the word industry, but it is one of the most important things coming out of Ireland. And it's one of those things everybody worries about all the time because you want to retain it, you want it to be well funded, you want to inspire and support creatives, and hopefully our Oscar Wilde Awards does that.
Yeah. And how many years that been running now?
This year, 2026 will be the 20th anniversary.
Unbelievable. So we've covered the scholarship. We've talked a little bit about the Oscar Wilde Awards and the Hollywood connection. I think we can now move into our third point, which is probably the most important piece, and that's the change in relationship between the US and Ireland. We talked at the start about how it's not the same as it was maybe back in the 80s, 90s, and there's just changing demographics, and the relationship is weakening in many ways, and some of the things that you're doing are helping keep the countries connected. Tell us your kind of estimation or analysis of where we're at, where we're going, and what needs to happen in order for
Right.
it to continue to be strong.
I have to be honest, I think it is a total flip of the coin at this point. When I created the organization, I knew I had no illusions about it. I thought there's a very good chance this will go nowhere, that interest will so dissipate that, it's the relationship with Ireland just becomes like the relationship with Germany or Belgium or
Mm.
every other country. Um, and it's not looking good right now if I'm honest about it. A lot of that generation that were so connected, the further away you get from the generations that actually immigrated,
Mhm.
the more difficult, the less likely the connection is. It has to go beyond that thin layer of I go to a pub on St. Patrick's Day, or I go to a parade on St. Patrick's Day, or I go to a football game in Ireland. I mean, those things are all great,
Mm.
but there's no depth in that beyond that event or that moment. And so that's why I feel with, the Hollywood event, if you can put together the creative industries that will keep working together and the scholars who will keep working with people here. We do the cycle on the border, which we could talk
Yeah.
about. You were on one of them. We started a cycle on the border between Ireland and Northern Ireland to it's one of those high-end cycles where, as you know, you're staying at castles, and it's an amazing trip, but you learn about the troubles because, I know you as somebody from Northern Ireland. People from Northern Ireland do not want sort of that excessive
Mm.
attention in many ways to the troubles. On the other hand, it's something that can't be escaped, and you learn from your past and you learn from the history, and it's very informative for other borders and other conflicts in the world if we don't totally forget about it. But I think it's getting the balance. So we like to educate people about what had happened, but we like to very much focus on what's great about the place today. The border is one of the most under-recognized places. Few tourists go there, and it's beautiful. And if
Mm.
anybody who has participated in one of our cycles sees, I mean, it's a
Yeah.
stunning place that most people don't know about. So I think all of those things, I think what's key is to do things which have sort of an ability to maintain connections well beyond the moment that you've done that thing.
What I've enjoyed the most about seeing the work of the US Ireland Alliance and what you're doing, the Mitchell and the Oscar Wilde, is that for me it does go beyond, I guess, the two surface level, easy, low hanging fruit of
Right.
what it means to be Irish. And especially in the context, I mean specifically in the context of the US Ireland, right? So
Right.
there's the folks that might say, "Oh, I'm Irish, I have an Irish
Yes.
surname,"
Yes.
right? Well, that's
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
interesting. It's back to
Yes.
your kind of great. I drink Guinness, and
Yes.
therefore
Yes.
that's my
Yes.
connection.
Yeah.
And then I think for folks like myself from the north and from Belfast, you go beyond just the troubles, and that's all there is, and all there was, and
Right.
all there ever will be in the
Right.
north. And what I appreciate about the work that you do in all these different arenas is it's deepening, it's making it more meaningful, and it's going beyond kind of surface level identity stuff. It's like, okay, why would JJ choose Ireland? Well, he
Right.
chose it because it was the only place that scene could be shot.
It really was.
I mean,
Yes. Yes.
and the Mitchells are choosing it because they're getting world class education and an opportunity to broaden their horizons. And you know, and the art speaks for itself, I
Right.
think, right now
Right.
with Ireland on the map for sure. So I think that's what I mean is that I love how you go beyond just the surface level, but I also know that that kind of those initial connections are weakening, and
Yes.
it is a hope for me just as a citizen here is
Yes.
that we continue to have that relationship with the US, not just because of our past, but because of
Right.
the opportunities in the
Right.
future.
Yes, that we can reinvigorate it again. And it takes time and effort and resources. And you have to have those things. It's like any relationship. If you don't put an effort into it and the time and the commitment, it's gonna fade away. And that's the way the US Ireland relationship is. It was incredibly strong once, um, post famine through, Irish people loved when John F. Kennedy became the
Yeah.
president. But that demographic in America is declining. The number of Irish Americans, or those who identify. You'd have a lot of people today who are Irish American, but they only think to call themselves American, right? Because it's so far removed from anybody singing Danny Boy in the house,
Mhm.
right? So hopefully, with a younger generation, they might be interested in what's going on here in sport or in the arts. And so you create a new relationship based on what's going on this island now, as opposed to some diddly eye shamrockery sort of stuff that
Yeah.
just pains me.
Yeah.
If
You
that's your thing, that's fine,
you and
but
me
it's
you
just
and me
not
both.
mine.
You and me both for sure. I suppose before I ask my final question, the other sort of theme that comes across in this conversation for me that didn't previously hit home is even though we're talking about the US Ireland relationship, what we're not saying is that the Mitchell Scholarship, the Oscar Wilde Awards, the cross border cycle, it's not for Irish Americans. It's not for only Irish. It's for everyone
Everybody.
to come and experience the country, understand a bit of the history and how it applies to their own lives, and think about what their relationship could be like with the country moving forward.
Exactly. I mean, I know when I started this, some people were, I know some people were kind of annoyed when I said you don't have to be Irish American to win, to receive a scholarship. And a lot of people talked about, there's a lot of talk here. The word diaspora is used a lot. And the diaspora is great, but the world is much bigger than the diaspora. And my feeling is, why wouldn't you want that um, Jewish American, Muslim American, whatever they are, African American, if you get them here, um, you can't narrow your focus to people who are just like you and are because you're just it's too small of a it's that's too small of a focus. I think Ireland can appeal to anybody. And I mean, I give you one example. One Mitchell scholar studied at Queen's,
Great
and great
university.
university, and he then moved to Hong Kong. He's lived in Hong Kong ever since. Had a Chinese girlfriend who's now his wife, and he brought her to Waterford Castle to propose.
Wow.
Now, again, if you get people, especially when they're 22, 23, it's such a formative period in people's lives, then they want to share. I was just looking at the value of this program, and I asked all the Mitchell scholars this year, how many people came and visited because of you? And so we added that up, and I looked at, I love AI and Perplexity and ChatGPT to ask them, how much does an average American spend? And basically, I figured out that just from the Mitchell Scholars this year, at least $100,000 has been spent by those visiting them here. So it all, again, the most frustrating thing I find, and we were talking about this a second ago, is people who want their return on investment immediately, and they want it to be obvious, right? But and there will be people say, oh, it's just 12 students. But if they bring over that many more people, if the universities get a, a, a presence in the U.S., they're seen. If the president of the student body of Stanford wins a Mitchell scholarship, there are a lot of other students on that university looking at that and saying, huh, what's that thing about Ireland and going to school there? Maybe I'll go there. And so it's sort of a roundabout way of creating connections, but they do take time. And it's frustrating when people know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. You just want to say, J.J. Abrams, that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars probably in tourism. It is the modern day equivalent of the Quiet Man,
Yeah.
right? And all the money and attention that brings to the country. You should just fund the Mitchell Scholarship, and you're still in the black as a
Yeah.
country if you fund it. So it takes a long-term view and a patience.
Yeah. Which is unfortunately often in short supply these days,
It
right?
is. It is.
So fingers crossed moving
We'll
forward.
see. We'll see.
Well,
Either way, given nearly 300 people an opportunity to spend time on this island, and they have their own connections with this island. So whichever way it goes, I'm happy.
Yeah. Well, look, let's end on a very, forward-thinking visionary
Okay.
note. This is a question we always end our
Uh-oh.
podcast on, which is, are you ready for your soapbox moment? But
Yeah.
how might the world change if we are to adopt some of the lessons that you shared around strengthening the US-Ireland relationship?
I think for Ireland, the change will be to maintain connections with, let's face it, a superpower in the world, which this country, you could argue, needs more than the Americans need it. I would argue, though, the Americans need this as well, because we do have to get outside the U.S. We do have to take into consideration the rest of the world. And we're very bad at that. The percentage of Americans that have passports is still fairly small. So I think the more connected that we are, the more we see the perspective of others, the more that we'll step back and just the things that we all assume and take for granted about our beliefs. But then if somebody else makes us think about it a different way, it's only added value for decisions that get made that impact everybody's life.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm genuinely hopeful and optimistic that even though right now we're possibly in a holding pattern for the Mitchell Scholarship, I'm optimistic that someone will come along, probably from this podcast, and say, let me fund the whole thing.
I think so. Call me.
Absolutely. Trina, I'm so glad after about
Thank
2 or
you for
3 years
having me.
trying to make this work. Thank you so much for
Thanks
joining the
for
3
having
Points
me.
podcast.
Thank you.